Good evening. I'd like to call this special meeting of the Board of Trustees of GCCISD to order. The time is 6:12. Do we have any citizens signed up to speak? No. And Mr. Sampson, he's on the other end. Mr. Sampson, was this meeting properly posted?
Yes, it was.
And do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do.
Thank you. All right. Since no one has signed up, we will now recess into closed session pursuant to the following section of the Texas Open Meetings Act. Everybody welcome Ms. Woods.
Closed session.
Not yet. We're going to be there in a second. The Texas Government Code section, let's see, 551.074, 75, 76, 82, and 83. No decisions will be made while the board is in closed session, and the time is now. If people would quit texting me, I don't know what time it is. 6:13. We'll be right back. Time 6:49. No decisions were made while the board is in closed session. We will reconvene and look at action item 3C, consideration of personnel. Dr. O'Brien.
Yes, administration brings before the board this evening a recommendation to approve the elections and accept the resignations and retirements as presented.
With no objection from the board, I will not call for discussion since we discussed this in closed session. Thank you.
So we recommend approving the resignations and retirements as well as the teacher elections as presented.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. Guy and a second from Mr. Renteria to approve elections, resignations, and retirements. All in favor, please raise your hand. Seems 6-4 and 0 against, the motion passes.
And for administrative elections, administration brings before the board for consideration a recommendation to approve the position of board certified behavior analyst, Blair Overman.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
A motion from Ms. Guy and a second from Mr. Renteria to approve the board certified behavior analyst. All in favor, please raise your hand. Let's see, 6-4, 0 against, the motion passes.
Counselor at Alamo Elementary, Carly Galino.
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion from Mrs. Woods and a second from Mr. Renteria to approve the elementary counselor as presented. All in favor, please raise your hand. I see 6-4, 0 against, the motion passes.
Counselor, secondary counselor at Point Alternative Center, Regina Felder.
Second.
I have a motion from Mrs. Barakatians and a second from Mr. Renteria to approve the secondary counselor as presented. All in favor, please raise your hand. Seeing 6-4 and 0 against, motion passes.
Student support administrator for what campus? Julie Sample
Julie Sample is going to be at CBJ.
for Cedar Valley Junior. Thank you.
There's two.
Yeah. One of them didn't tell us where.
I've got the other one coming up
Alamo
next.
and Crockett.
Yeah, we got that. So do it, Julie.
Julie Sample
At
for
CBJ.
student support administrator at CBJ.
Correct.
To approve Julie Sample for student support administrator.
I have a motion from Mr. Renteria and a second from Mr. Sampson to approve this support, this SSA for CBJ. Like that. All in favor, please raise your hand. I see 6-4 and 0 against, motion passes.
And for elementary student support administrator at Alamo and Crockett, Sunsarai, Eureka.
Move to approve. I'll second the motion.
I have a motion from Mrs. Guy and a second from Ms. Woods to approve the elementary SSA as presented. All in favor, raise your hand. 6-4, 0 against, motion passes.
And for instructional specialist for special education K through 12, Ursula D. Simon.
Move for approval. Second.
I have a motion from Mrs. Woods and a second from Mrs. Barakatians to approve the SPED instructional specialist as presented. All in favor, please raise your hand. 6-4, 0 against, motion passes.
Instructional specialist for special education, deaf and hard of hearing, Erin Stokes.
Move to approve.
Have a motion from Mr. Watkins and a second from Mrs. Guy to approve the instructional specialist for deaf and hard of hearing. All in favor, please raise your hand. See 6 for, 0 against, motion passes.
And for speech pathologist assistant, Alejandro Estrada.
So moved.
A motion from Mr. Renteria and a second from Mrs. Guy to approve the speech language pathologist assistant. All in favor, please raise your hand. 6 for, 0 against, motion passes.
And for selection of education diagnostician, Audria Taylor.
Move for approval. I'll second.
I have a motion from Ms. Woods and a second from Mrs. Guy to approve the educational diagnostician. All in favor, please raise your hand. 6 for, 0 against, motion passes.
That
And
concludes the administration's recommendation for administrative personnel.
I will adjourn the special meeting at 6:54 p.m. Okay, I think we're ready to begin our workshop, and before we turn it over to our participants, I want to thank Rick and the new crew for having this set up for us tonight and allowing us to meet in this nice facility. And many thanks to those of you who sat through the stadium with us, to get eyes on what's going on over there. Appreciate that. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Dr. McCall and his group.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Mr. Flynn, Board of Trustees, Dr. O'Brien. Today, we are here to go in a little bit more detail with our facilities conditions assessment with Stallworth Stadium. If you all can remember back in June, during the June board meeting, we shared the initial report, just giving some executive findings during that time. And so there was a request for us to come and have some more in-depth conversation about the report, as well as we have Mr. Roberts here from Banner, which is the company that performed the facilities conditions assessment for Stallworth Stadium. And so we, of course, want to be able to provide as much information as possible and answer any questions that the board has. What we will start off doing is just going over the presentation that we did back in June, just to share some of those findings, just to kind of, bring everyone back into remembrance of our conversation. And then we also received some information from the board requesting that we talk about the potential cost that it would be to do a replacement of the stadium, as well as some information that we will share there. And so we'll start by going into just a brief review, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Garcia just to kind of share some of the highlights of the information that we shared back in June.
Good evening, everyone. So this presentation is the one that we saw back in June, and you don't have it in front of you, but I'll just highlight some of the points. It's basically a summary of what's in the report in front of you. And so some of the things that we talked about was, what was the purpose of this report? What was our goal with reviewing the report? And really is to see the current condition of the facility, trying to figure out or make sure that it was safe and help, if it would last longer than we anticipate. And then we also talked about what was reviewed, mechanical systems, the structure, a lot of the architectural pieces. So we reviewed all of those items with you. And then we talked a little bit about the dollar amounts that were estimated. I do want to remind you, these were dollar amounts that were in 2021. And so we talked about the $13.3 million being the amount to repair the deficiencies that were discovered during the assessment. And then we also talked about a one-to-one replacement being closer to $32 million. Again, that was with no additional improvements, just repairing what's there or replacing what's there. And then we talked about some of the findings. So some of the findings being, the steep ramps, the cracks and some spalling on the concrete, the concession issues with lack of climate control for food preservation there, the roofing membrane at the deck for the press box. And then, again, we went into an additional summary of some of the other deficiencies. The concession stands, we talked about the elevator performance, and the ADA, we talked a lot about that. The ADA needs, the ramps would need to be replaced. So those are some of the items that we discussed. And then we showed you some examples, we shared those, and these are directly from the report. Again, this was just a handful of the items that were highlighted in the summary that was presented to you in June. And in the report, as you can see, there's a lot more photographs of those items. We talked about the damaged CMU walls, deteriorated conduit, and obviously the issues with the parking lot that are currently there. And that was pretty much the summary of the assessment. So then you have this packet, which is a 56-page or however long assessment that goes into detail for all of these items. Again, the summary is basically the first couple of pages that you see there. And then after that, what you start seeing is a lot of line items and their line item cost estimates that the NAIR came up with for their repair and replacement estimates for each item. And then it's divided by each different structure, CMU, restrooms, et cetera. Those were all the items that were not highlighted in the report as far as pictures. And so we're here to answer any questions you may have about the report itself, and Mr. Roberts can assist us with any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts, thank you for being here tonight. Your company is an inspection team, I presume?
My company is a construction management firm.
Okay.
We manage construction, do assessments. Our position is the client's agent. We don't do construction, we don't design, we just hope you get what you want.
So just give us a summary in your own words of what you see at Solar Stadium that you need to bring to our attention that we may not have seen on our tour already.
Well, if you went on the tour, it's from a structural standpoint, from the concrete itself, the building is sound.
Good.
The problem with the building, because it's a 50-year-old or so concrete building, is the fact that it's going to leak, it's going to crack. Some of the issues that you have out there is the water, it floods over there. The press box is at the end of its useful life. It leaks all the time. The restroom facilities aren't equitable. The facilities for officials aren't equitable now. We've got male and female officials, so you have to be careful because there's no space for separation of gender. It's a lovely building for its time.
There's a but.
That's very polite.
What we're doing with stadiums now and plans for the future are different than the ones that were built back then. Those are the ones that I played in. That looks like I played in when I was in high school. But there's more activities for both sexes. There are flags and band and cheer and so many other things that are involved now. The electronic access to the building, digital access to facilities are big things now, and everyone wants to be able to Instagram themselves being in the stadium at the game. So things are different now than they were then. I said she was great for her time, but she was great for her time.
So, Mr. Roberts, what I've heard architects and engineers both say, that if you build a structure to last 50 years, that's an expected life. We're in the 54th year, I think now, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So, but we have many buildings across the nation that have lasted 100 years or more, 200 years.
Yes, sir.
So it's not unreasonable to think it has more life to it. I think this report tells us it will just take a whole lot of money to bring it up to par with today's uses, as you were alluding to.
That is correct.
I think the board's interest would be in some type of cost analysis of the money it would cost to restore it, to bring it up to today's standards, and or starting fresh?
Well, I think this, to bring it up to as much up-to-date standard as you can would be in the $30 million range. But there are certain things that you can't do. You can't change it from what it is. It has a footprint. It has a structure, and you can't change that. You can't add more restrooms in that building there. You can't add more space for coaches in that structure there.
Why can't you?
I'm sorry?
Why can't you?
Because there's not enough space inside that structure.
But you're adding a building to it. There's plenty of room on the stand where it's already there. There's a lot of dead, open space right there.
For adding, like a coach's facility.
Whatever you decide. You mentioned the referees' rooms where it could be equitable. You could build that. You could build, you said the restrooms, what did you mean by equitable, the restrooms not being equitable? Because there's a male and a female's restroom.
I don't think they're all ADA compliant.
No,
But that's not what he's talking about.
okay,
That
so
is equity.
No, he's talking about something else.
compliance is an equity issue for people of limited mobilities.
I got you.
ADA.
Yes,
That's
so
why
ADA
I-
compliance.
here.
So that's it. ADA compliance, that.
Okay. And we can't upgrade all this stuff? Like you mentioned, the press box, the roof is leaking, so we fix the roof.
In my opinion. In the end, it's going to wind up costing you more money to try to fix it than to replace it.
For that little roof? It's a little roof.
The building itself.
Okay, but
This and here's, I'm a construction guy.
Okay.
Construction person, sorry.
you're a consultant.
Yes.
Okay, you're not a construction guy. You mentioned that you didn't build. You said you're just an.
But I can get, but
I got you.
But I manage the building.
I got you. I'm just clarifying.
Okay, no worries. I'm a program project manager for construction.
Okay.
We can get you just about anything that we want. It's just what is it going to cost?
Right.
So once you start adding those additional costs, the balance of the cost-benefit ratio starts to sway.
Well, especially with inflation right now, that's understandable.
Yeah, inflation is
I'm
crazy.
just saying, would it be more cost effective from what I'm hearing, what you're saying? The engineering report, now, did you do that or did somebody else do that?
I did, my firm.
And y'all said there was 50 years of life on it?
In the concrete,
Yes.
in the actual concrete structure.
Right.
Yeah, the concrete structure will last another 50.
Okay, so if we build a new one, there's gonna be a big discrepancy in finances to build a new one.
Yes, you wouldn't build one, you probably wouldn't build one as big as the one that you got.
One of the things that I see that concerns me here,
That's fine.
the costs and if we do go in and we start doing a lot of these renovation projects that are necessary to bring it up to speed, we'll lose some of our grandfathering. We'll have to come up to code with county permitting. We're talking about, much more detention
Oh, yes.
space needed. You mentioned the angle of the ramps not being within code for ADA, et cetera. The bathroom, everything. I think once we crack that shell and start doing a lot of work on here to renovate, we're gonna find ourselves
It will trigger a lot of other
building like new anyway, starting almost over, so to speak, when it comes to losing our grandfather status.
There's gonna be more than that. There's gonna be-
Right, but so renovating this, that's what I think what we're trying to figure out is renovating this going to end up being as expensive as
It will trigger a lot of.
building a new facility.
Well, let me just say this, Jessica, because I went out there, I did the tour. And, by the last report that we got, I was like, dang, that thing's gonna fall down. We're not gonna have no more games here next year. I even asked the question to Dr. McCall, and, whether we were capable of having the games, and they said, oh yeah, we're good. And when I went out there today, I know you said that it looks like the stadium we played in high school, but it is a high school stadium. And, you know, I thought to myself, that stadium is just in good condition. It's in real good condition. There's nothing wrong with it. There are a few fixes here and there, and we're back up to par, I think. And so, that's just my opinion. Because, I mean, I'm like you, I mean, I could get somebody to come fix it, but
And having been on the same tour, I respectfully disagree with everything you just said.
well, I'm sure of that. I'm sure of that.
I'm kind of afraid to walk underneath some of those things.
Well, there were
No.
portions of concrete that
But that wasn't the concrete structure itself, that was some dilapidated.
You
You
won't
get
get
what
it,
that
you
you
won't
footing.
get it when you're walking.
We have a person trying to speak down here.
About 10 minutes now.
Oh, you need to raise your hand, Ellen, we're all raising
She
our
tried.
hands over here.
I know, I've been raising it.
Understood before.
Because when he said, in the 13, and then the 32, 32 is based from, replacing one-to-one. That means like you replace let's say a faucet or toilet, that's just everything that's on the list that needs to be repaired.
So, Mr. Roberts, correct me if I'm incorrect, but, so the replacement cost at 32 million is if you take that concession stand and replace it exactly as it is. It's a CMU box right now, and you're putting the same exact thing back. And you do that to all the different
Not adding
components.
improvements.
It's right. So you're not adding HVAC, you're not adding new freezer, walk-in, new freezer, right, exactly. So that gets you to the 32.
Functionality.
That's a
So
replacement
the only
cost.
thing we have to compare to then with modern facilities are facilities that have been built in the last 5 years.
Correct.
Would we be able to, would we, in looking at the press box itself, and back to that question, where you would be able to, can you build around anything that we have, in your opinion, that, to replace, and not just replace a roof if it's dollar to dollar, but some of the main things that we would need to be functional, would you be able to expand on those things if the money in doing that, in your opinion?
The issue with the press box is that it's like a trailer. It's independently built, it's stacked in place.
Okay.
Right. So basically, you can patch it, you can paste it, you can repair, but you're, in the end, so you're throwing good money after that, kind of.
But if you totally redo it, even and replace it with something?
Are you asking if we removed it, could we replace it with the same exact thing?
To the point of Mr. Renteria keeping the bones and taking away the concession stand, CMU boxes, taking away the press box, taking away the peripherals and bringing back new to the old bones, I think might be what, and that is to the tune of the 32 million, is that right?
That would be.
Right, but not adding the
No.
equitable items that we talked about.
Like restrooms and stuff.
Right.
Right.
Brenda, can you talk about Stewart Phase 4 and how we've taken an old facility that's run through its life and then what we've done to it now?
Right, so when we did, and obviously y'all are aware, we went through many phases with Stewart, where we just finished Phase 4, so that tells you the 4 different phases that we did. The first one was in the West Building where we converted, one of the major renovations that we did to that is the old gym. And so we had to convert that completely into a new cafeteria area, because that's what was the new need for that facility to accommodate all of the students. And
Brenda, am I mistaken, was phase 1 and phase 2 part of the 2013?
it was correct.
And then phase 3 and 4 have been part of
Yes,
the
that
2019?
is correct. And so I'm going to be completely open with you and say that had we planned in a different manner for a new high school, we could have taken the majority of the money that we spent towards those, because at the time we did not know, we had different bonds for it. They were planned separately, and so we didn't have the foresight at the time to be able to do that. We could have probably built a new high school.
Well, even TEA changed their rules. It used to be limited to 400 students. Now it's unlimited. So we plan on, in 2 years, it will have 900 kids in it. So we built
Correct.
with the 2019 structure,
Right.
with new updated information,
Absolutely.
a larger facility, which is phase 4. But to your point, if you had every dollar you spent
Right.
on Stewart Career Tech High School, including the renovation of the 2 pre-existing
Yes,
buildings
absolutely.
and the building you built in between the 2 to make it a comprehensive high school, you could have easily used that
We
money
could
to
have
build
built a brand new high school.
state-of-the-art, brand new, every square inch of it.
Yes, sir.
Through 2013 and 2019, we spent about $46 million at Stewart.
Which is about what a junior high costs,
Correct.
which is about the same size as that.
Size of that
campus.
campus, correct.
Correct.
So just trying to,
But just for clarification, he didn't say he's gonna bring the same size back, he said he's gonna bring it smaller. See, we're not talking about the same dimensions here for the, probably a larger amount of money we're talking about. So, and we're not talking about demolition either. Those figures weren't thrown in there either. So, I'm just saying that, from what I saw, I don't see no 32 million, I don't know where they got that from. But I can tell you, I walked in them bathrooms, they look nice. In the women's bathroom, all they gotta do is retile the floor like this, and it would be nice, it's nice in there. The men's, same thing, the press box was decent. I mean, the best spot is up.
I would never argue with you, but have
Right.
you been to a new stadium?
Yeah.
Anyone?
I go to stadiums all the time.
You've been to a newer stadium?
Yeah. But, you know, right now, I think that the issue is with times of inflation and with all the things that we got going on, because they don't look like it's gonna be getting any better anytime soon, I think we need to live with what we got. With the 50-year life that they gave for the stadium, all we do is, and it's in good condition right now. We don't really have to make all these changes
Well,
right now.
I would concur with you, except for one thing, we've not included athletics in the last 2 bonds, significant amounts. We did get tracks in on it, but we haven't invested in any athletic program.
Well, you know,
Through a bond initiative.
right, and I wasn't here at the time, but I'm just saying right now, I don't know what the situation was like that. I think
It was
we had an
that was
economy that was a little bit better
Yeah.
than it is now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to say that we're gonna spend 32 million when we all we gotta do is fix the restroom and the concession stand? And, you know, in my opinion, the real thing that was damaged in there, that needed probably an upgrade, would be the electrical system that was in that room. And, you know, I could see them redoing that. But, for right now, those ADA ramps for the people that need wheelchairs, because we discussed that, they're good. They're not bad. And if they need any modification, it's not gonna cost no $1 million to do it. So, I mean, to me, what I saw, that stadium was good, the field was good. I mean, I was really impressed because I'll tell you, after the last report, that they gave over there, I thought I was gonna come over and see this thing falling down already. Looking like Troy over
One of the things
there.
that we did in the report, that how much rain that does come out if it rains and you feel at the bottom, it comes through. So that part of the structure, I didn't remember that happening before. Is that something new from the deterioration or change in the structure itself, that now that it rains in the bottom of?
So believe it or not, this press box is an upgrade from the previous press box. And that
Not the press
upgrade-
box, I mean it underneath.
Oh,
the
oh,
stadium.
sorry.
In the concourse,
Yes, yes. Is
to my knowledge, it's leaked through since at least, the late 90s.
Man, it leaked in there when we were in the 80s, when we were there. We used to come and hide under the,
Get sprinkled on?
yeah.
So I bet that's part of the design system where it's going to leak. through.
Right, because you don't want water holding on
Right.
on the stands
This is
itself.
how it runs off.
You don't want no standing water up top.
Correct.
I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about the press box. This one is an upgrade.
I would never-
And I would equate it, like you, Mr. Robert, as a trailer house.
Yes.
It was just
Yeah.
maybe pre-designed, rebuilt, and lifted up there with a crane and put up there. And it's just very deficient, especially in comparison to state-of-the-art facilities.
And the floors are very soft, everything, license up there.
And to clarify, it's 30 million for one-to-one replacement and 13 million for upgrades and improvements.
For repairs.
For
Repairs.
Yeah, okay, because that's what I was I looked through here,
She mentioned.
So the 13 million is if there's a crack, we're patching that crack.
well,
And the 32
right.
million is we're replacing the ramps altogether.
okay, but so if we look at the executive summary page, and it does go, you know, it splits it into the 5 different sections, talking about where the
Yes.
13 million would go. And then you have the facility condition index. So if you were to spend $1 million on the press box, that would make it 140% on the indices here. So what, I mean, explain that to me, I'm
What does
sorry.
that mean?
The FCI.
What page are we on?
It's page one.
Page one, actually.
So, I mean, what are we talking about? $1 million for a press box? Is that a new press box, or is that just fixing what's wrong with it?
That's fixing what's wrong with it.
Now, does that mean repairing the floors, fixing the roof,
Floors, roof, walls,
elevator?
elevators.
Yeah, and we can
Elevators,
go,
yeah.
So doing
And so-
everything that's wrong with it for like $1 million, and that makes it at 140% of what it was?
So that's a score that's given to it when they go out there and assess it. So just the way that you explain, that we explain it is relative to par, the lower score is better. So when you start
Okay,
eclipsing that 100, it's in really bad shape, right? So the lower the score, the better that facility is. The higher the score, the worse off. So when you start getting, and so we'll do this again later on some other projects, is the board, the school district needs to evaluate what's that threshold, what's that magic number where we say, all right, when we get past 50, we probably want to start thinking about, replacing that facility. But the fact that we say that we're over 100, like you said earlier, that press box is at the end of its life based on their.
Pass.
so this,
Well, passing.
Yeah, but it's a new.
this current needs, that's what it takes to replace it, but the FCI, that's what it is right now, not what it would be.
Not what
if
it
we
would be
put-
after.
Correct.
So for example, the restrooms, if we did, say, 570 worth of work in there, all we would be doing is repairing broken things, maybe clearing out.
There may be some plumbing issues, right?
Putting some flooring down, fixing the doors,
It's
things
not
like
gonna look
that.
any different than.
It'll just be
The same
Spend a
thing,
while to
in good
Maintenance.
working order,
Yes.
but the
Correct.
same as it is now.
correct?
So that's where we are at the $13.3 million.
Yes,
Correct.
absolutely correct.
So the $32 million is if we were to add bathrooms?
One-to-one replacement. So if you were to
Level.
rebuild that structure
concessions.
today, just like the way it is now, no upgrades,
So why would we do that as opposed to the
it's just a
13 million?
Just a comparison.
We wouldn't.
She's just giving me a second.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, is that if we can repair all of this stuff to working order for 13 million, why would we do a one-to-one replacement for
Right.
32
I'm
million?
with
That-
It's not suggesting that, it's just saying, in today's dollars, it would cost you, if you were to build this and you didn't have it before, if you were to build that CMU block for concessions, it would cost you $32 million to do those items in today's dollars.
we kind of.
So then we're back to where Mr. Renteria is, why don't we take the bones and expand? How is that impossible? If we had plans to add a field house out there, is there not capability to have some of these facilities that are not equitable now to be included in that, maybe redesign what we were going to do with that building and make it more equitable for our officials,
If
adults?
we removed what's there, we could do it. If we removed the structures that are underneath, we could do that. And replace with something different, absolutely, we could.
And that's
But
why.
then, what were we talking about though for building on at the ends of the field when we were talking about adding structures
So
there
that's,
to?
we were discussing the construction of the field house. That's part of the bond.
And that's $8.2 million
Right, but
allocated.
that's not in here.
Correct.
anywhere.
Right.
That's
That's
not in here anywhere. So
Correct.
there's obviously a location or a possibility for expansion of our current facility in a new field house structure. And then if we're talking about getting rid of ticket booths at the ends and all that, there's real estate there that can be maximized.
Absorbed.
Yeah, used for different stuff. My biggest concern is the flooding. Because it doesn't matter what you do up above if we're not controlling what's going on underneath, and if we don't have good runoff drainage, if we don't do something with the parking lot and help pull water away, that's gonna undermine our massive zone structure that's good for another 50 years unless we have a couple more Harveys or likewise.
So the question was asked at a CBOC meeting, do we need to add add detention. And we would have to add detention if we introduce more impervious cover. The engineer, civil engineer who looked at that site said the gravel meets the impervious cover, so we wouldn't, if we're gonna tear that out, add more parking, so you don't necessarily have to trigger that.
Unless you're
much.
trying to get a health department certificate, they're gonna want you to go back and
So-
permit for parking and detention
right, so you
and
go-
everything else.
So that's where the other thing, right, and the number of parking spots doesn't match the number of seats, so we're gonna have to ask for several variances on that as well.
So currently,
Even if we're grandfathered?
You can
Not
start
for
breaking
remodeling.
that down, you're not gonna be grandfathered.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If we're grandfathered, we won't have to ask for none of that.
If you start doing it.
Well, here's my deal. That parking lot has a lot of shell over there on that side. There's nothing wrong. There's not sinking, there's not puddles of water, nothing.
You
We
get
can
to
live
park
with
on
that.
the front row as a trustee, what do you know about the back of the parking lots?
I've only been a trustee for a year.
so
Always
just
parking.
to talk briefly about Mr. Roberts' comment, this stadium has a footprint. He used that term, footprint. So the footprint, when the stadium was built, was 42 acres, is that right? And then it lost 15 acres to the transportation center or more,
Yeah.
18 acres.
That's right.
So it's on 30 acres. Currently, to build a stadium the size, I think it's 12,000 capacity, is 60-acre requirement. For
If we
parking.
build one.
If you were to build one anywhere in the state, it's 60 acres for 12,000 seats to accommodate the number of parking spaces for the 12,000 seats and for the detention on site. It's a 60-acre requirement based upon, we just investigated 3 different.
You're talking about
stadiums.
parking lot?
Well, I'm talking about the entire footprint.
Right. But,
Right now, it's 30 acres,
so we need enough parking lot for that many seats is what you're saying in the footprint.
so we don't have the space on that side of on that side of Archer
Right.
to accommodate the stadium. So we would have to start talking about parking over on the Gentry side.
Yeah.
And then you have safety issues. But we've been doing that for years.
Yeah.
Anytime there's a big bowl game or something like that there, everyone parks in the Gentry grass. But that's still.
You talking about that corner lot that we own, that big one?
Yes,
Yeah.
the gentry.
Is that adequate to serve our needs? You believe it is?
We did it through the years. We used to park, almost walk from the mall sometimes to get over here, between Robert Lee and Sterling Clay. I mean, look at any stadium, look at the Astros, when you go play their game. If you don't pay $30 or $50 to park up front, you're gonna walk. You know, there's nothing wrong with walking. I'm just saying.
I'm not debating or arguing that. What I was trying to say is, with this location, we do have a footprint, and we're limited by that footprint.
Let me say this, Gary. Randy, let me say this. You got Gary on one, can leave. But, let me just say this. Okay, what I hear is y'all want to build a new stadium. That's what I hear. That's why I'm getting all the kickback on what I'm saying. But, you know, hey, if that's what y'all want to do, let's just do it. But don't tell me it's going to cost $32 million to fix some small stuff that I know don't cost no $32 million.
Well, that was a replacement,
I got
$13 million.
I got you.
$13 million for the repairs.
I understand, and I'm just saying, if we want to build it, let's build it. But I just don't, I think this has a lot of life left in it. And if we go smaller, I mean, we're defeating the purpose.
So
Are
the-
we though?
That's what he said.
What is our maximum sellout? What's the largest crowd that we've had?
So our in-Sterling game brings about 4,500 spectators.
4,500 spectators, and then you've
16,000
got
seats
your,
there.
What about the Buddy Bowl?
And how many square?
Bayou Bowl brings about 7,000.
Okay, there's a big number. Anything you got?
and does that
Alright, so
include,
I will
like
open-
all the cheerleaders and band
No,
and
that's
performers and
that's
everybody?
me.
Right.
So like 4,000 to 7,000 is our largest expectation at this point.
So a 12,000
as far as the seats.
size stadium would be recommended for a school district our size. That has 3 traditional high schools that would rotate through it. 12,000 would be the standard recommendation for a stadium. So it still would be more than anything we've ever sat at, but it would be about $4,000 or $5,000 seats less than what Stallworth offers.
Right.
And that's one of the appeals. It's one of the largest, 5th largest stadium in the state. I don't understand. But we've never used its capacity ever since its opening, except maybe in the 70s when we went to state.
When President Ford was here, that's another big deal. It was full.
I wasn't even alive.
Well,
I was in elementary, or
yeah, but you're from Pioneer.
If we could
no, I was
change,
in
I'm going to change the subject briefly.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Back on, starting on page 46, there's all kinds of meeting notes. And I assume these are things that some committee popped over before we, is this stuff before we got to the Mr. Roberts' company, or was this during?
No, this was
session?
during the interview process with Veneer. Veneer
Okay.
came and spent several days out here
Yeah.
walking, reviewing the site, and they also sat down with, I think I've mentioned before, they discussed along with our department, with maintenance. They interviewed the maintenance department. They've got some work order requests for maintenance and reviewed those as well. The grounds department, nutrition services because they manage the concession stands, the fine arts department because their students also access, you know, the field, the band, the cheerleaders, the drill team, and also, who am I missing? Well, obviously athletics department. And then, I don't believe, did we interview? We did not CTE, but that was something.
And then it trickled down from all, being a person who has a lot, I read all this. But did this trickle down into what the executive report is, or did that lead you to your inspection, or how did we use all these meetings?
We had the meetings to try to determine the end users and what deficiencies they saw, what concerns they had about the facility itself, so that we would understand what, based on what the structure was being used for and the deficiencies in that use. And so once we amassed all that together, we went out and looked at it as well. So we had fresh eyes, but we had eyes that understood what the concerns of the end users.
Thank you. And I've lived many of these, so I recognize them right off the bat. And I'm going to be willing to open Pandora's box at this point. How much is the new stadium for the school district our size that would sit on I-10 where everybody could see and want to move to stadium?
I have a question too before we move on.
Yes, yes,
If we're looking at this, because this whole conversation is coming about with graduation, so I'm just going to open that box. And if we look at what we're needing and for 22-23 school year graduation for at our stadium, and we look at those repairs, what is the timeline for something like this of the 32 million or the 13 million? What time frame would those be with the repairs for something like that? Would it be, because a new stadium is 5 years out, so.
Yes.
But if you're looking at something that we're trying to move forward to make a decision upon, for what the community is asking of us, then what do you have a timeline or have a basis of some kind of timeline?
Well, first, the question would be, is it required to do that before we have graduation? According to what's the last meeting, that's not even required, the upgrades to have a graduation here. That's why we can have football games here. So that question is moot, if you ask me.
She wasn't asking you, she was asking her.
I understand that, Richard.
Okay.
I understand it, but I'm bringing up a question about what she's asking.
As usual, you haven't even let her finish.
She finished.
No, sir, she hasn't put the mark on it.
As usual, you're trying to cut me down again.
Nobody's going to put any. The bottom line is this. We look at the figures and what it's going to cost for a new stadium. We look at the figures, what it's going to cost for the 32 million. We look at the cost for what is 13 million. The graduation is another point where we kind of look at it. Is the building structurally sound? They say yes. But what if, and this is just a what if, one of the ramps, one of the structures collapsed because it wasn't totally structural sound. Then we get into litigation. Now we're talking about $100 million, $200 million lawsuit. We need to make a decision. We're not trying to change anything, we're trying to improve on it. If it's 13 million and it improves us to be able to do graduation, football games or whatever, hey, we gotta sit out in the night on graduation in the stadium. Last one I was at, it was Thunder and Light, so fine. But if we're gonna plan this to be all purpose and we spend 13 million, and then also the 8 million to build a field house complex where the teams, the officials, and everyone can dress or whatever we need to do, okay, fine. Then whatever we need to do, electrical, bathrooms, whatever it is on the stadium, then we do that. Now we come to an in-between situation. We're not 32 million, we're not 13 million, we may be 22 million to do all of this. If the field house is 8 million, okay, yes, let's do the field house as well as do any repairs or whatever we need to do to the stadium. But what we want to make sure is, as a district, that we not putting people in jeopardy about walking across a ramp and people get on and be jumping and stuff, and all of a sudden it falls. Now we're in more problems than we had in the beginning. So whatever we decide on, excuse me, let's decide on the middle road. I'm gonna walk the fence on this one. Hey, let's do what we need to do, and let's do what we don't want to do. But the bottom line, we gotta do something. If we gotta pressure wash, we gotta clean paint, we gotta put a new press box up or repair the other press box, but we need to do something to the facility, because it's been there 50 years, and we haven't done any major obstruction to it.
I was also thinking in terms of for the new upcoming season.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at anything, some of these things do.
So let me respond to your question from earlier. You asked about a timeline. Could we have something for the next graduation in 2023? I think if we did anything, it would just be repairs, not any replacement of anything, because you would still have to design that and go through permitting, all of that situation, and then construct that. So for 2023, we would only be limited to repairs.
Here's a question. Here's a question. In response to the comment he made about the walkway falling down and caving in, with the engineering report that we got, there was no indication.
That's correct.
So what he said is just
So
way out in left field.
if I can respond to that,
Well, I can catch. That's one thing.
so structurally,
Catch me, brother.
so structurally, we don't, the engineer saw that it's not going to fall down. However, there are other safety concerns because of the incline of the ramp. Those are different safety concerns versus it falling down.
Okay.
Now here's some food for thought. I was thinking with the money we can put an escalator up there, just like they have at NRG, and let people that want to go through the escalator, go through the escalator, and everybody else that wants to run up the ramp and run down the ramp, they can run up and down the ramp. So, just food for thought. And we're gonna spend that.
Let's continue trying to do two things. If we could build the field house, that would eliminate the restrooms and all of this underneath.
No, sir.
Only for the athletes.
For the athletes, but also you can have a dressing room for the officials in the same
Correct.
facility. Yeah, because if you're gonna do that, you might as well make it for the officials, dressing room, athletes, the team, and everything. If we do that, and we can stay in that $8 million range, then fine. Concession-wise, maybe it'll stay up under that, but maybe take all of that section where the restrooms and locker rooms are, and make all of that concession, storage, whatever you want to do. But also, then still do whatever major repairs we need to do, particularly the electrical, running crime cable, whatever we need to get, but do all of the things that the 13, and then if you got 8, that's 21 million instead of 32 million. That's just a thought. That's just.
So one of the things that I want to point out, and again, Mr. Roberts, correct me if I'm wrong, but the $13 million and the $32 million does not include detention, for example, if we want to take care, because that is an improvement to the site.
Right.
So those numbers are not figured into care. So if we're taking care of the flooding issues, that's not necessarily, I think we talked about maybe some possible regrading of some ditches, but that's not a full, because there are ditches already, so we would just, I guess, repair those as much as we could.
So the extension, the detention pond that's on the east side, west side of the
It only functions for,
bus.
for the transportation department.
Okay, so if we are doing repairs to the existing stadium, have we looked into how much more, because we're not changing the land site. We're just,
As long as we don't grow outside of the
Right.
current impervious surface, we
Yeah.
would not have to do,
right.
we wouldn't have to do, but that doesn't mean that it solves the drainage issue. If
Well,
that makes
yes.
sense.
It also depends on where the field house goes. If we
Right.
rip up grass and place a field house there, then that could trigger.
But you could do a
Right.
linear detention pond, because they'll let you do that. You can put a long detention pond. and
Yes,
stuff
sir, it can be
around.
any shape, absolutely, it can.
And
What
you
if we
could
do it across
probably
the street?
Even the one that we have in order to take some of
Yeah.
that. You could use the one from transportation and simply make it deeper, hold more gallons in order to accommodate whatever we did for adding the field house.
So we
I-
did look into that, and one of the responses we get is our flow line that we daylight into, we can't go any much deeper than where we're at now. So,
Reasons
It has
the
no
water
water
table.
not so much the water table, we're so close to where the waters would either go west or
Right.
east, that there's not enough depth for us to get deeper.
Yeah,
We're already
because-
pumping the water out now.
Yeah, because the ditch goes east and the.
We're at the highest point of where the
Yeah.
water starts to collect, so us getting deeper doesn't really help us. If we're further
Then
down,
it won't leave.
correct.
Yeah, Mr. Referee, you mentioned
Water
off-site
feed.
detention. That is a possibility to be explored. Yes, sir.
So we could, in theory, if we thought about maybe across the street detention, if that was needed, but you would need the infrastructure to do that. So it literally has to flow into that detention pond from the rains here, absolutely. No different than we did like elementary 17, except for, or Pumphrey, we didn't have to pay for that because our good
Yeah,
neighbors took care of us there, but.
So we would have to, Archer Road would be down for a period of time to put in that flow.
Or we could go underneath the road, yeah. We could
With
walk
piping?
underneath the road.
Yeah, you could go across in detention there. But also, I know Dr. O'Brien, I like this, you can also put parking across the road. Because we do have police that handles parking and everything while we're here. So you got parking on this side, and this time, let's put concrete instead of gravel. Because buses and turning and everything doesn't work, but, you know, it's,
I agree with you, anything's possible. I want to just address Mr. Rincrea's one point. I think I've charged my team to give information to the board, and they've done research and present to you. I want to make sure you understand there's no bias here. We don't want something any more than we wanted the best elementary school, any more than we wanted the best junior high designed and built. We're trying to bring Goose Creek into the 21st century in regard to the types of facilities that we do provide. If there's a determination by this board that this is where we want to stay and we're going to refurbish, that's what administration will do. So just to be sure, we're not trying to influence, we're trying to provide all the data and all the information. I think one word was used, not throwing good money after bad in one sense, but if there is, beyond the emotional attachment, if there is practical use for this stadium where it sits, and we can address all of those matters that have been brought up tonight, that's your charge for us, that will be what we do. I mean, there's no.
Well, if we're gonna open up Pandora's box, like somebody said, you know, if we're gonna grow and build and compete with North Shore, with these other big schools, I have a problem building one over there on I-10. But if we're gonna stay here and just compete with Barbers Hill and Channelview, Crosby, you know, that's a whole different story. But if we can accommodate a stadium with the level of type of competition where we can compete with some of these people that are in state every year, I can see the expenditure being worthwhile.
So I need to refer you to a movie.
Yeah. We've had this discussion, but, you know,
Yes, ma'am.
So if we decided that we were just gonna do the repairs to the building and to the structure, how long, say we repair the concrete on the cracks and those types of things that need to be repaired on the concrete itself, how long does that last? Because right now it's saying it would probably cost about $10 million to do that. How long, when would we need to spend that $10 million again to repair it again?
How long does it last? Well, the problem with that is that I can repair it over here, and this is lovely now. But over here, it may start to crack. It's an older building and it's going to crack. So it's an ongoing maintenance concern. Because you'll have to keep repairing it. You have to keep chasing the cracks.
Yeah, sure.
That's what I got from reading through here. I mean, we need to paint every 5 years. We need to, you know, all these things that are going to preserve the life of the concrete, fix the cracks. Like you said, we're gonna fix these cracks, and we're gonna have to fix those cracks, and we're gonna fix those, you know, every couple of years, and do a better job of maintenance. I think that's where we may have been a little lackadaisical.
I call it neglect, but
I didn't say neglect.
I know.
He said neglect, not me.
Another thing to keep in mind, while it costs 10 million today, 10, 15 years ago, it cost 15 million, we'd probably do the same thing, right? Just because of that inflation that keeps adding up.
But it's
Right.
no different than
And-
your
And so
home.
we read here like that could give us 20 years more, or that could give us 50 years more, depending on how often we spend this $10 million, you know, in order to keep what we have alive, functional.
And that's why, you know, we wanted to bring up Stewart, because that just goes to show we can do what the district wants us to do with the budget that's
In
given to us.
phases, yeah.
And we're gonna get another 30, 40 years out of that facility now. It's just, you weigh, is it worth renovating or rebuilding? That's the $1 million question.
And did you get everything you would have wanted to do? We were limited to the constraints of what the building itself was and did the best with that, which I think we did a great job of it, but you are limited to the constraints of that existing
And
facility.
one of the things we emphasized the last time is that's just making it operational. That doesn't mean anything cosmetic. And so when you're looking at it, that's a lot of things that's happening behind walls, which don't get me wrong, that's very important. But we don't want to give the idea that when you pull up to it, it's going to look, you know, because
We're not gonna have a
$13
new
million.
concession stand with hamburgers and hot dogs.
Right.
Not even for the 32 million, huh?
Right.
Correct. That's not including adding the concrete for the parking lot, because that's just replacing what's already there.
Right.
Well, yeah, the parking lot.
And I'm telling you, once you try to pull those health department permits, you're shut down all over.
They try to get one way or the other.
Yeah.
They'll stop all the projects.
Okay, we're gonna let the board show up and cook hamburgers and hot dogs on the grill.
I'm just saying, tear those ticket booths down and let's do food trucks out there. Food trucks out there, there you go.
See if you come out there and serve. See if you
Right,
can
you know
bring
that
brisket
food truck?
tacos and.
I want some of your barbecue.
All right, we lost our way.
Yeah, so we gave some information about the new stadium, you know, request that was sent to us, and we certainly want to explain some information that's here. The project justification, of course, as we've gone through the facilities conditions assessment, we've looked at mechanical, electrical, plumbing, architectural, structural, all of those components, and we know the results from that. But we also know that there may be some upgrades that we would look into if we decided to go down the road of building a new stadium for current standards, modernized student use. As we were talking about, stadiums these days are built for not only athletics, but also for district events, fine arts events, hosting competitions at a larger scale, playoff games, things like that are all revenue opportunities if you have the stadium and the facilities in order to do that. And so the project description that we listed here is that the new stadium would contain bleacher seating for 9,000 spectators. Typically what you see are stadiums between 9,000 to 12,000 because people have more options on how they watch games. They can do it online, they can, you know, so it's just a little bit of a difference as far as having a 16,000 seat stadium unless you have a very large school district. The stadium complex will serve the entire district at various capacities, of course designed to meet the district standards for technology support, program needs, fine arts, athletic programs. The press box will house an AV production room, which what we saw for a lot of stadiums, recent stadium builds, and I had the opportunity to participate with that, is when you build state-of-the-art facilities such as these, you really have an opportunity to bring students in. So our CTE students earning practicum experience, hours there also, they could be paid to do some of the work, field side reporting, all of those advances allow for our students to also be involved, culinary, you name it. So of course the athletics locker rooms, officials dressing rooms, coach's office, trainer rooms, conference rooms, things like that that you see. Some of the amenities that you see in our newer stadiums, changing rooms for our fine arts program so that they don't have to stand in line with spectators. If they need to change out of their uniform for whatever reason or go to the restroom, whatever it is they need to do, they normally, and some of our newer facilities have their own changing spaces for that. And then also providing upgrades for concessions, restrooms, parking, and various support spaces. When you see the description, you will see the construction cost there. The construction cost is simply what it says, the construction cost. You're looking at the materials and the labor of that project. When you're looking at soft costs, that's where you're looking at architectural fees, that's where you're looking at furniture, fixtures, and equipment. And for our stadium facilities, you know that can be somewhat expensive. As you all alluded to, we are going through an 11 to 15% inflation rate annually. Normally in construction, you would see anywhere from maybe 2 to 5%. We're in some challenging times right now, and you all mentioned it with inflation, and so we have to factor that in if this is something that we're going to be looking into in this moment in history, right? We certainly hope that inflation will go down, and we'll actually be bringing some information to you all at our next board meeting about what we're seeing in the market and what we're getting from the market as far as the likelihood of inflation going up or down in the very near future. But this is what we're seeing on projects, and so the cost that you see here is budgeted at $82.5 million. Keep in mind that's considering inflation, so if we get into a good moment where inflation may subside, that number could be lower, but we also have to look at the cost of land in order to get 60 acres of land, which Dr. O'Brien alluded to. And so
that's why we heard probably even 3 months ago the number 50 to 60 million. And then with I believe some of the projects you're working on with the 2019 bond bid out recently in the last month. And that's where these inflated numbers came from. I chaired the board, we just about escaped the inflationary
I was going to
numbers
say, thank you.
with 80 to 90% of the bond.
Yeah.
And now we're down to the last 10 to 15, 20% of the bond, and we got caught.
So if you also look at this cost is, as Dr. McCall mentioned, including inflation. So we did a preliminary schedule for this. This is looking, if we were to say we're jumping on this, we did a bond and we, sold those bonds and designed it, started building it, and we're talking about a quick turnaround here, looking to bid in early 2024. That's what the inflation cost would include. So all of that is not today's dollars, it's in 2024.
With the current trajectory.
Correct.
Right, exactly right.
If there were a change in the economy, which we all hope for,
Right.
it could be better news to us, but as it stands right now, this is what we have to go by. So we're trying to present real inflated numbers as they might be.
And, you still gonna have maintenance on this new facility. You're gonna have, if the plumbing goes out, if the AC goes out, if everything goes out, you still have maintenance on it. It's part of the situation.
Yes, ma'am.
So say that we decided this is the route we wanted to explore and the bond passed and all of that stuff. Would we then kind of hold off on the field house, which is what we already have $8 million earmarked for, and if that kind of goes towards the new?
Absolutely. Go ahead, Gabe.
Well, that's one of the considerations, and then, of course, we would bring that also to the CBOC. They are in charge of assisting us with approving, what we passed in the bond, and so that would have to be a discussion by the board. We would bring it to the CBOC and to you to decide. If we wanted to recapture that $8 million, we could towards this.
So, an administration's job is to inform the CDOC, the citizens, what the options are, and then ask for them to make an endorsement to you. But ultimately, the decision lies with the Board of Trustees on any bond expenditure, any operational expenditure lies with you.
Other questions?
I got one, go ahead. Evening. Crosby didn't build a new facility, they built a new press box and.
They did some renovations to their
Yeah.
facility, yes, sir.
Yeah, I was just curious, what did they actually do? You know, Crosby has a real good.
They built a new high school.
They built a new high school.
And moved the middle school to the old high school.
Right.
And then renovated
They renovated their stadium. A lot of the work that they did, Mr. Sampson, was hospitality space, to be able to, host some dignitaries in the community, be able to maybe host class reunions, things like that. And so they did a lot of work in that space for hospitality. And then they added some storage under the stands, things like that. But yes, they did more of a renovation versus of course,
I was just curious, I know they did.
Their difference is also is their bleachers are iron
they are.
versus concrete. And they did skirt the perimeter of their stadium with logos and what have you.
Yes, they did a lot of branding work here. They did a lot of branding.
I was just curious, I remember they had done it over, but also I remember they built a new high school.
They did.
What did the one in North Shore end up costing? The big one there on,
Oh, Sheldon, so that one was for construction alone, that was $33 million. That project went out for bid in 2017. The construction took place in 2018 and we opened it in 2019. That was Sheldon ISD.
yeah, okay, so which one is right there on?
That's
the
Sheldon
public?
ISD, that's C.E. King Stadium.
The C.E.
Sheldon
King
Stadium.
one is right there, you can see
Right on the
that?
beltway.
According to
That's a
inflation,
nice.
Yeah, that's right in line with this.
according to inflation today, that same stadium would cost
Double,
Yeah, in the 60s.
Yeah,
in the
so
60s.
it's a very nice looking facility, I've been there,
And
so I
it's
know
a-
what.
fewer seating capacity.
It's 10,000 seats.
10,000.
10,000.
So we looked at area, recent stadiums for our cost.
But what you see with stadiums now, of course, is the hospitality spaces, class reunions. People want to do those things at the stadium, and so they're building, PD spaces, multi-purpose spaces is what they're calling them.
Right, well, because usually they're in connection with the homecoming game,
Right,
et
yeah.
cetera, so.
You can use it for, a room with a capacity of 200 to 300, the possibilities are pretty endless.
Well, and just think of all the
Athletic
end of year
banquets.
athletics parties,
Yes.
our softball teams, all the different groups that get together for end of year parties. I mean, if you have a facility where they didn't have to go rent something else.
Most of the stadiums that we've seen over the last couple of years have a full-time person dedicated to the rental of those spaces because they are rented out every day, all the time, they stay booked.
And that is my understanding, it pays off the bond center.
They get a lot of revenue from those.
Now that we have the cart before the horse, I think it's been discussed enough that the answer to this question is yes, but if we want to have a graduation 23 in the stadium as it is right now, we could do that and not fear anything bad happening while we're sitting there.
That's correct.
Except that, we want it pressure washed and painted and cracks repaired and
Make sure
like
everyone falls
$13
down right.
million worth of work that should be done on it before we do anything else there.
Why?
Even football. I mean,
If we want a new stadium, let's show us as we want.
I agree.
I mean, let's face it, graduation brings as big a capacity as anything you mentioned earlier.
Right. But then I'm looking at, well, okay, so I have questions about the cost of graduation, and I can't work on an iPad, so hang on. Because I know that we talked about All right, so, historical snapshot of graduation data, and there's an estimated projected cost at Stalwart in the future. And it's pretty, $1,800 for the facility cost. That's probably a random number that got thrown out. $50,000 for miscellaneous. And in that miscellaneous, you're talking about stages and cameras and video packages and all of that kind of stuff. $30,000 in grounds and custodian and maintenance. What is it we can do for $30,000 that what would we do for $30,000 if what we're seeing here, we need to spend $13 million to clean it up and bring it up to par and everything? What kind of maintenance and preparation on the grounds would we do for $30,000? Because I'd rather do that.
So I think Abel, our vesting, can give you some of the details on that estimate.
That is the physical labor for personnel to move chairs, tables, clean, pick up, and talking about graduation. This was happening in 3 nights. If we have it on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, that's take everything over there. If we currently have, as we have been doing it, let's say we have a Fort Park or a Fertitta, they have chairs, they have all the stuff there, so we don't have to take all that.
Right, that's in their facility.
That's in our facility, right, so we do go manage it, we do take chairs to stage the students when we go to kind of set it up, like a mock area, but those numbers are considered for the amount of people. We're going to have more people than we currently have going out of town to help set up. Christie and listening to be serviced in that area. And that's pretty much getting it ready.
But that's why we paid Fertitta $93,000 instead of $1,800 for the facility.
Right.
Because
So
he provided all of that.
they did a lot of the things that was physically necessary to make graduation happen. That was set up there. So
They're
we
the
just
one that
kind of,
they put out all the cheers and all
Yes.
that, so this group that happened.
this group, we would have to go physically do that for 3 days before, do it afterwards, and, if we're going to be leaving anything on the field, we have to secure those things. We don't want to just get destroyed if we break into that. So those guys,
We have 5 high schools, and what's good for one is good for all of them. So I don't see how we could possibly do it in 3 days.
I bet you could have you could have the 2 smaller ones on one. That wouldn't be that difficult.
You want to do 8 a.m. and 8 p.m.? No, that's what they're recommending.
Well, I'm not going to be at 8 p.m. one. But I'll take that 8 p.m.
Are you saying you don't want us to get
now currently, Mr. King,
I say what is good for one high school is good and equitable for all 5.
So that's in other words.
If the 300 people,
indoors.
if the 300 citizens that voted 51 to 49% have graduation in Stalwart Stadium represent our community, then our 5 high schools need to graduate in Stalwart Stadium.
Before we pressure wash it and paint the look.
Amen.
That's a democracy we live in.
And I think that the quote also involved overtime pay with labor costs because of the.
right, so if we're going to do this on a Saturday or Friday night, we wouldn't just leave when graduation's over. As we currently do, all workers and maintenance and grounds, when we get back, once graduation's over, wherever we have it, we typically have to stay, clean up, pick up some things, load everything back up in box trucks, pick up chairs, tables from the transportation area, load all that stuff up, and get the cones, get all the stuff that we took and prep, load that stuff and bring it back. So this was having this on 3 different nights, but if we did 5 graduations, then we're going to talk about, do we want to have them all in one day? Are we going to break them up on 5 different days, as we said? So this was just estimate having 3 graduations on 3 different days. The pre-setup, the setup, the cleanup, 3 different times for the 3 different high schools. That was not included in this.
I bet you could do it on 3 days though, like he's talking. An evening on Thursday, Friday morning, Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday night. You can do it, you can probably still do it in 3 days, but my point is that we're paying our people, we're spending money in Baytown, we're supporting our economy, and it's still going to come out being cheaper than if we're driving all the way to Beaumont and, spending money with them, or even into Houston. Fertitta does not need our money.
You said that with a straight face.
Did I?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, well.
So
I mean,
to answer your question was, it's all labor.
Yeah.
You were asking. what
It's all labor, so,
Overtime labor.
right, but I would still, God, I would still want us to do something. We don't get the pressure wash? Or anything?
I guess you could a little.
Well,
But the
what do I
money's
care?
earmarked
What do
for-
I care? My kid didn't get graduation at all.
But
I was watching that.
the 50% will be happy. But that's quite a big difference from nobody wanting it to, a lot more people. Because that was said once and nobody wanted it, but
Well, and so
there's a lot more
the survey
people.
went one per household, correct?
Yeah, it's one per senior student, so if you happen to have, I think we had a few families that had twins and they voted twice.
Okay, so one per senior student
There you go.
household,
Yeah.
basically. And
About-
it went to all five.
No, just went to three, just went to Lee,
went-
Sterling,
okay.
GCM, so that's about 1,600 estimated
And how many
students,
responses in total?
about 20%, 300 responses.
that's high
That's
compared
more
to
than
the voting.
voted for me for school board.
That's what I was gonna say. Hey, y'all lied, but the voting record in the state and the nation is 10%.
That's pretty good, 20%.
That's what's done.
We sent it out several times, of course it was over the summer, so usually when we have surveys, we have a higher response on our surveys. But, because it was during the summer, I think that probably is the reason why the response is a little bit lower. It fluctuated, it's about half and half, I think, that whenever we did the cutoff.
Mr. Roberts, yes, sir. Since we've moved on to another conversation, you're welcome to be dismissed if you want. Sorry, I don't know if you're traveling.
Or you can stay and watch the show.
I'm just happy that you invited me, I'm happy to be here,
We're
and
thankful that you came.
thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.
Whatever we can do it better to help Goose Creek do this.
Banner?
Yes, sir, better. Better.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for the report,
Yeah.
It's my pleasure.
because then I didn't have to walk the stadium today.
I got stuck out there in, between the fence and the stadium because I hopped over to try to
I think I've
inspect
done that
things.
before too.
And then I had to get out. It was kind of embarrassing.
You didn't hear anything, so.
No, I didn't. I'm good. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Did we finish the survey question or?
Well,
is there more?
I mean, I think, the survey is what it is. I don't know how you would, said my kid didn't get one at all. I graduated outside in the heat. Emily graduated in the Ford Center. I mean, graduation is graduation. It's really up to what I think the students and their families want. I mean, I do like the idea of us spending money in our own community. I mean, that's really important to me. I think it's, not only is it good for us to do that, but it also may even expand the number of people who want to come or be more involved or, and then also they could say, I'm not going out there, it's 100 degrees outside. It could go both ways.
There's one way to find out.
No.
Ms. Garcia, can you have a new stadium built by?
Sure, by Friday.
All I need is some
I'm over here
granite
sweating.
countertops. We'll do that tonight then, right?
Time and money, sir.
I know they're kidding, but I would like to see some upgrades, like in the restrooms for the women's restroom. They don't have tile or nothing like that, like a men's restroom.
Did you go in with the restroom?
Yeah, we did. We went through all of that.
Actually, the men's restroom was nice.
Yeah.
I saw the pictures. I'm good, I saw the pictures.
The women's restroom is bigger and more roomy, which is good, but some tile, stuff like that would be nice for them to have.
Mr. Sampson,
If,
are you good?
if we are going to do the graduation here, get an estimate on paving the home field parking lot and guarantee that no buses go on that parking lot.
It's paved, the concrete won't.
Well,
The
it's
asphalt.
paved with concrete, but if we can't get it paved with concrete,
You
then,
train the drivers up
Buses
there?
tear up asphalt, they don't tear up
I
concrete.
know,
I thought
So
you had
this
one back
is
in front of my
$4
house.
But actually for concrete.
I know, but if we can't pay with, and we can't find another direction for the bus to go, then,
We actually use that side as part of our training program because it's the way it's supposed to be.
The mall parking lot, nobody else uses it.
This isn't before. I tried to.
And one of the things to Mr. Sampson's point about the parking, for police and security, currently it's a nightmare because of the crushed gravel, the flooding, and one of the things that we spend a lot of man time and power on is because we don't have line
Striking.
parking, striking. It takes about maybe 4 times the manpower to facilitate that. So that would be a definite upgrade. And also the lighting, there's no lighting in that parking area. And I can't tell you how many times my officers, even with vests, have been close to being struck by a car because I can have an officer 20, 30 yards ahead of me in my lights pointing in that direction I can't see. So if that is done, you know, police, security, we're here to support, but we definitely want to take care of our people because it's extremely dark out there. So even for the graduations, football games, whatever, please don't forget about us out there. We want to stay safe as we make it safe for.
You know, ain't nobody gonna hit a police officer, come on now.
Sir?
You take them to jail. Take a police officer.
So take them to jail and police officers to the hospital. That's not a trade-off.
Oh, here's a
That's not a
question.
fair trade-off.
Hey, you mentioned flooding, what flooding are you talking about?
The parking lot floods.
Yeah.
And that's
Oh, right.
not,
walkways.
yeah, so you lose a portion of the parking for the visitors. Because again, the visitor side has very limited development, but it's not a good situation to be in when it's dark.
Well, hopefully it won't be raining that day or not at all. It hasn't rained in all the years that, in the 12 years
We
we've been
still
gone.
have a football
It
game.
rains down here all the time.
I'm not saying all
We're
the
in a
time.
drought.
I'm
It's
talking
raining.
about during graduation.
yeah, let's stay on graduation.
At the end of May, we have had some serious rains in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Yes, we have.
We had a person speak the other day, said it never rained on graduation.
I know that I
That's
was
Ken
at the last graduation where we had to move it to Goose Street Memorial, and then everybody couldn't get in. So we had more pissed off parents than we did otherwise. So, yeah, so if we have to move it, then
So that's the chance you take when you graduate outside. You have a chance that has to be moved. Ms. Lee, you've been mighty quiet during this graduation conversation.
She gave it
Is that by design, or do you have anything you need to know that Dr. Bollinger hasn't already added?
No, just, you know, in thinking about just a trivia, for GCM and also Sterling, it's about 7,500 people when you're out of town. When you're in town, I would think we'd have more. I mean, obviously. So the parking you're talking about, and the traffic down that road is going to be, we have to be really prepared for that.
That's everything.
Plan, and I know you talked about coordination with Baytown Police Department, but we can do anything. I mean, just like Dr. O'Brien said.
So why do you think more people come here in Baytown as opposed to Fertitta?
It's no limited, it's not a limit on the number of
Not
tickets.
limit on the tickets.
That's what we're talking about. We want more people from Baytown to show up. That's exactly the point. People can't go to Fertitta to go see their children or grandchildren or go to Ford Center. Have you seen the construction down I-10 when you go to Ford Center? It's terrible. Go to Houston, same thing is terrible.
Yeah.
It becomes a safety issue. I mean, it happens.
Maybe we don't limit the tickets,
Right.
we limit the parking passes. You have to have a parking pass to come to graduation at Stalwart, and then everybody should carpool.
Someone said something humorous about the mall parking. I mean, we may have to bus from the mall parking lot because
Bus from the
there's no way we
high
can
schools,
accommodate
bus
the
from the
number of
school
vehicles.
parking lots.
Can we use the bus?
Just the thought of having that many people there excites me. To know the graduation where everybody from Baytown there. That's what it's all about. And kids
You
remember
could,
that.
you could
And
certainly
please
limit.
know, I was just asked to coordinate it.
No, you're, that was Randy that put you on the spot.
Well, I'll tell you this much, the attire for graduation is t-shirts.
Exactly.
T-shirts and shorts, that's it.
I'm down with it. It's
But
good.
if you look out in the audience now, they're wearing all, yeah, they're wearing whatever, so it's not live.
And as we digress, I think we've got future agenda items for. Yes, ma'am.
On the logistics of safety, on that, when you have a graduation of that magnitude and that number of people, and we would really have to think about security and entrances, because you have a whole different set of rules at these other facilities. So that would be the capacity and the number of people, and we have to think about that, unfortunately, in the times that we live in.
Yeah, for us, that's where the elevated number comes in, just like everything else, because we're facilitating all the extra bodies that are in the facility, in the stadium, that are providing security for
Not
the
just
graduates.
parking, but
Yeah.
meeting.
So we're like U of H, they provide officers that were working the parking garage and the streets crossing over.
Right.
That would now have to be our officers.
Right, as well as the people in
As well as-
entering, we would have to.
And again.
That sounds great.
Again,
Okay.
the key thing for us, remember, the parking lot is gonna take 4 times of our, that's most of our manpower, because we don't have a parking area that has stripes, because I can point this way, and you can just go park. In this current parking situation, you're gonna have people all kind of ways, the line will be leading the line, and no one can get out of the parking lot. So it takes a lot of attention for us, and you're right, if we're gonna be on Archer, we're definitely gonna have to man Archer, and if any other requests you're talking about, busing from off the
Well, the reality is, last time we did graduation here, we had access from Showlander and Archer. We didn't, and we don't have the Showlander access.
Well, you could do one thing, and you have to coordinate with Baytown, Harris County,
Yeah.
is make Archer one way, in both lanes. Push them out,
Yep.
and push them out, Showland or whatever. Yeah,
So when you look at our numbers for the police and security, you just scratch it out.
right.
Now we're going up.
You don't take out.
Well, I think
Cones,
you can even get additional manpower from transportation or from, maintenance and all for parking, because every time you have festival parking, you've got people in t-shirts with their little sticks out there. They park massive amounts of cars in those fields that are not striped, or, which I want a striped parking lot with little car stops and everything for you, and lights out at Stalwart, but I'm not gonna get that just yet.
Best.
Meanwhile,
The only problem I have with that is, if you don't have people that know what they're doing, then you're not looking at, you call it like party at wreck. So directing traffic, I want our personnel, police personnel, so.
you go to Renaissance or any of those facilities that do it every weekend, and they got kids out there that just say, park down this aisle, park down, and they've got string out
I'm
there.
not saying that.
Yeah,
that's not
I
true.
mean, there are things that could be done to assist and free up your qualified manpower for more,
Chris?
important security positions.
Ms. Leaf, I think that's, one important question is, if we were to pursue the current track that we've been on, securing outside facilities that are indoor, is there a deadline?
That's what I was going to say.
It's
Yeah.
probably within the next 30 days.
The contracts are scheduled to come out this week.
Do we have a cost?
Yes, we have a cost.
For what?
We have a cost estimate.
Sure.
I want to verify that. It's $15,000 for the facility and the
Say that
staffing.
15?
1-5?
Yes, but there, there are other pieces,
Yeah.
15,000. And then the estimate, best estimate based on the past there for the sound, the video, that whole crew, is 19.5. So when you add those together, you're looking at 34.5. So, and then you add in, of course, the other stuff, the food, which we need to provide. The miscellaneous, the grounds, I just used the past, cost from 2021. And so the total estimate would be 106,753. And then looking at Stalwart, there's one thing I forgot to add in on that estimate, and it was in the miscellaneous area, like the flowers, the plants, and bottled water. So that estimate, best estimate would be 108,243. So
pretty comparable.
it's very helpful.
I do know. I said, I do know we can't go back and repeat it anymore now we're out of control this year. I know it was.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we
Not being a day.
So I need to talk about the reason, I'm glad you asked that, Dr. O'Brien, because we had a day reserved. I just need to be able to, tell them, sorry, I'm not going to use that, so someone else, the contractor coming this week.
So our next board meeting is August 1st, that's within a week, so we should, as a board, have a decision about that at that time.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, especially those of you who are here on overtime. What I'm talking about. See, that's what I want to see. So she's full of 30.